Hello out there.
We're live.
Hello,
Hi.
YouTube. Let us know.
Things are different.
We recruited Doug to help us let us know if this is working or not. So can you hear us? You should be able to see us. I'm relying on Doug for feedback or anybody else who's out there, but we should be live. Doug, are we live?
When are you kicking it to me for the test?
Right now.
This is happening too.
At what point am I being kicked to?
You're kicked. You've been kicked like a bad dog.
Well, now I'm freezing. Now I don't know what to say.
So
My whole intro plan. You know, I told Dave that I won my Orange Theory comic. He didn't even care.
Because your ability to make a competition in your mind when it doesn't exist. I'd like to remind you of the story you told, Sean, of how many games that you beat in a year. When I had beaten like one long 100-hour, 120-hour game, and you're like, well, I beat 10 games last week. Granted, 6 of them were Castlevania that I beat in a day, but I'm killing you in this competition. I didn't care.
Well, I mean, that's true. So that is valid, but this is actually, it was a thing that has like a leaderboard. And like, they track it.
I see. It's written down. Congrats.
At the leaderboard. Thank you. That's all I wanted.
So for the people,
You're awesome. You're great. That's all I was looking for.
So for the people in chat, none of which have been helpful whatsoever so far, how is the audio for me and Dave? And also for Sean, is it audible? Does it sound like trash? Is it at least decent? Because we have a non-normal setup. If you're watching, and if you're listening, you have no idea. But if you're watching, you realize that I'm actually where Dave normally is. So it's weird.
There's a room here that we usually use. So it sounds fine. Thank you, Maisie.
Maisie,
At least one else
very
is
helpful.
Yes.
I'm very proud of her.
But how does Sean sound?
Yeah, but Maisie's just hearing me through the wall, and it's like, I can hear it just fine.
That's
Yeah, Sean is tough to hear. Is going to be tough because my phone is as loud as it can be.
well.
I don't know how I'm going to even sign in and get that call going in the backup. So we'll keep working on it.
Workshop this. Sean, just don't talk for a while. We have a topic though, I promise.
Sure. Like we didn't just go live for nothing.
I'm like the leader of the Topicon. How am I supposed to not talk?
Well, we can just talk for you.
He just meant for now, not forever.
Great, I can imagine it now. Sean, huge J.K. Rowling fan. Great, excellent.
What if I well, it's going to be in frame then. If I prop this up here.
There we go. All right.
Okay, you can. It's kind of ducking down into Dave, but now if Sean talks, let me know how it sounds, people in chat.
We're testing live.
Oh yeah,
Testing,
there we go.
Testing.
We
Sound
got-
check.
All right.
Doug says, "Oh yeah, there it is." So I think we might have found something. You should see the jerry-rigged setup we have.
It's fun. But all right, Sean.
Well, Chris, as you pointed out, this is like our early days, except still better.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically coming up right upon or just past the 12-year anniversary. And again, obviously technology has improved and whatnot, but it's kind of remarkable to think that even this bootleg piece of shit setup is miles ahead of where we started. So allow me to formally welcome you to the Team Objection Podcast for February 28th, 2023. It's episode 565, I think. There's no overlays. There's nothing fancy going on. No multicams, no microphones. It's just us. I'm in Dave's room. Sean is here. And from the title, you might have noticed, we're going to talk about Hogwarts Legacy.
It's a thing that everyone's talking about. Also, I love the fact that I can point the proper direction this time to actually point at Chris as opposed to the opposite direction. No one knows that outside of who works for us, but yeah.
This is a real grassroots effort we got going on right here. God damn, 12 years though. Holy shit.
It's actually like we're right at that 12-year anniversary, I think, everybody. Because
so we were just talking about how I used to be like in the closet doing the recording, and that was more than a decade ago.
And it was late Feb, so it's right around this time back from 2011. It is now 2023. And around that same time, I'm trying to tie this in as a segue. When did the Harry Potter books come out? Was there a book that came out in 2011?
No, last book. There's a movie, I'm pretty sure, that came out around that time. Last book came out in like 2008.
So the main thing we're going to talk about is going to be somewhat of a shorter episode. Everything's obviously kind of scattered, but we effectively haven't been live since the 9th because we did that earlier show when the Kevin Durant trade happened. Missed last week because I had to get out of town to avoid a storm, and now I'm still down here because there's another 18 to 24 inches of snow coming to Flagstaff. So we're just going to kind of talk about Hogwarts Legacy a bit, some of the impact, some of the pushback, the vitriol, how the game itself is doing, what it's like, and, kind of leave it at that. It's going to be shorter, but we wanted to at least come to you live because, hey, we respect you out there. We appreciate you joining us.
First things first, Tech Guy shows. It's backwards, everybody, but episode 1 was February 13th, 2011.
There you go. And it's actually going to be right side for them. The preview for us is backwards, but they'll be fine. Like, it doesn't say whatever said Toyok. It says Coyotes.
Gotcha. But yeah, February 13th, 2011.
I know we lost some time in the pandemic, but that's still wild to me. But anyways, Hogwarts Legacy, Harry Potter, the game. I mean, there's kind of two camps, right? Broadly speaking, it's, I'm going to play it because I'm interested and I am okay with whatever moral dilemma is presented. And then there are those who are very much not okay with it. And they equate playing this game with hating trans people. Bottom line. I guess we can either tackle that, or I can just tell you I played it and I can give you impressions of the actual game if anybody is actually interested in that at all.
Since you're a trans hater, Sean, you've played this game. I'd actually be curious to see how the game goes.
I'll start there. Because some of the hate is like, I don't understand why people are playing the game when there's so much controversy and it's not even that good. And what I would say is, first of all, it's like at a 90 on Metacritic the last time that I checked. It may have budged, I don't know, a couple points since then, but it was pretty late on in the lifespan. So 90 is pretty high for Metacritic. So the idea that it is just a mediocre to bad game is not an opinion that's shared by the majority. And in my experience, it's pretty solid. So if you're a fan, you're getting all the stuff that you want from a Harry Potter game. You get to do the sorting hat. You get to visit the school. You get to choose. You don't really get sorted, but you get to choose which class you're in. You go 2 classes: herbology and potions and defense against the dark arts. I mean, it's great. Hogsmeade. You're drinking butterbeer. They also they mentioned butterbeer like a million times.
It's great.
And I would think that there's like an endorsement, some company has paid an ad for butterbeer, but it's just butterbeer. It's not a real thing, or it probably is. But anyways,
isn't that the whole deal with Harry Potter though? Like why people have written so much fan fiction, have cosplayed fan fiction, continued this franchise. The last movies came out 10 years ago, about-ish. The last books came out 15 years ago. I mean, I feel like the ability to insert yourself into this world, because honestly, it seems like a pretty cool world to live in outside of the people dying all the time. But it seems like a super cool world to be able to insert yourself into. And this game pretty much allows you to do that and go to this school, which sounds fantastic. So, of course, I think it would be something that I would enjoy too. I haven't played it yet, but it seems like something I would enjoy.
Yeah, and that's all great. There are some questions raised about the world because it's the same world but in the past, and so there's nothing that can be done about the status quo. For example, so when you talk to house elves and they're just slaves who are horribly mistreated, and you can't pull a Harry Potter and give them a piece of clothing and free them because that doesn't happen until much later. That's a little gross, I guess.
And I think it's also been the source of some of the game's, well, I was going to say biggest problems, but that's not true. But it's like there is a transgender character in this game to sort of buck the trend of some of the stuff with J.K. Rowling we're going to talk about later. That's here in the game, which is good. There's definitely a lot more representation of minorities, which is good. But because it's in the past, the question you have to then ask yourself is, what happened to these people? Where did they go in the next 100 years before the movies take place? Were they erased from the world? Like, what happened?
Yeah, well, right. So there's those questions that I would say is a flaw. And, a lot of the battle mechanics, good, but not great, not super deep. You can't, class, there's not a lot of specialization with classing up your wizard. Going down different skill trees or anything like that, which I was assuming you would be able to do, and you can't. You get a level up, and you just get like HP or defense points or whatever automatically assigned. So that was disappointing. So what I would say is, it's great on like the surface. It's a broad surface of things that immediately are pretty and fun and engaging, but not a lot of surface level to all of the different mechanics. Still, like, I would say it's a solid 7 to 7.5. And a little bit more if you're a big fan because of all the Easter eggs and getting to be a part of Harry Potter, and a little bit less if you don't know Harry Potter at all. So Chris, this doesn't even like include you because you have osmosis absorbed some things. You're not going to get as much out of it for sure. Part of the nostalgia is a big factor here, but it's a solid game.
Yeah. I mean, I've wanted to play it. I felt like it's something that I can enjoy, and I'll get there eventually to play it. But I struggle. It's so weird hearing. It's funny how almost the controversy for this game has brought this into the spotlight so much more, which I feel there's a possibility that makes people want to play it more almost because they might not have heard about it, or at least heard about it to the extent that they do now because of all this controversy surrounding it.
Yeah, I mean, we've passed 12 million in sales. I think I saw a tweet about today or yesterday. Like, it's done phenomenally well. Obviously, the fact that it's multi-platform, although not as multi-platform as it's going to get, as we joked when we looked ahead at the games that were coming out this year, it still has the old gen stuff in a couple months, and then the Switch in June. But still, it's hit the most current stuff, and it's multi-platform, so it's doing well. And in some ways, I think you're right. I think the backlash has almost maybe spurred sales forward, which was certainly not the intent of the people who are the loudest in the room against this.
It's always funny how that happens, isn't it?
I think the controversy, has definitely boosted sales. I think there's a small percentage of people who bought it. But certainly probably not more than the people who are boycotting it on principle. So I think it really just is the controversy has brought it into the forefront of people's attention. And when it's there, people are like, I guess I'll check this out, either to see how bad it is, or, maybe they didn't know they weren't aware of it. And now it's on their radar, and they're like, Harry Potter, it's been a while, I will play it. So, in that sense, the people boycotting the game, I would say that probably has backfired.
So I guess that leads to the bigger question I always have is, what level do you have to separate the art from the artist? I mean, there has been no real question what some of the stances that J.K. Rowling has taken. I feel like her being on Twitter has been the worst thing she could have done for her legacy, unfortunately. If she would have just kept creating content or being involved in content, people wouldn't know any better. But I mean, there have been many artists in the past who have been very questionable, athletes in the past who have a lot of very bad things, and people still cheer for them. Where do you separate that? I've always kind of said I'm okay separating the art from the artist, and that if they'll kind of get their comeuppance one way or the other. But I know a lot of people don't take that, and that's their right. But I don't know where the exact line is on that.
I mean, that's tough. And here's what I would say, Dave. So we're getting to the point where the anti-J.K. Rowling people are, there is a group of them that are almost becoming a hate group themselves. They're going on online and finding people who are streaming it and just being like really pretty hateful. It's going against being like, hey, I really think that you shouldn't play this game. It's like getting really nasty. And so, you would think that's not really helping. And they're equating, if you play this game, it's sad to me, they're saying, that this game is worth more to you than the lives of trans people, which I would say that is just an equation that you are making. I have not bought into that. You are just making assumptions. And I think that's my long-winded way of just saying, I think it's open to the person.
Yeah.
I think if Kevin Spacey and the things he did, if that really triggers you and you don't ever want to go watch another Kevin Spacey movie,
great.
I think that's fine.
Yeah.
And that makes sense for you. Personally, I'm not going to do that because I don't know, maybe like if Bill Cosby, maybe that's where I draw the line because it was so tremendously terrible what he did. Yeah, I think it's up to everybody to draw their own line, and you can't sit here and dictate to people what they are okay with and not okay with, or make those connections of if you do X, then you are Y.
I think Cosby is an especially tough case just because he was like America's dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was the father of the 80s, you can argue. You know, we have a certain lineage of like, here's Archie Bunker, and there's, you know, Ted Bundy, Al Bundy. And like, you know, there's these TV fathers that go in an order, but like Bill Cosby was one of the biggest ones, and he was just the wholesome guy. His stand-up wasn't especially dirty. He was in Jell-O commercials. Everything was fine. And then he did the most like deplorable thing ever. So it's really tonally difficult to go back and watch his stuff. And also he's an on-camera performer. So like what I have a hard time with this is J.K. Rowling's world is separate from what she believes. There may be reflections of the way that she is in that. That's probably inevitable. But the world of Harry Potter has always been one step removed from her own individual beliefs. And now you can make the case that Hogwarts Legacy is 2 steps removed because it's not her. She really didn't have much to do with this. The developers even talked about how they kind of distanced themselves from her because of this and put in some little digs at her, whether, like I said, there's a transgender character, there's little references that are kind of making fun of the source material. That's all well and good. But now it's like, for some people, they were able to lose themselves in this fantasy world. It was a way to be like, all right, I have my own issues going on. I'm trying to figure out who I am. But for this time, I can pretend I'm in this world, which is great. And now that world hurts them. So I understand why they're lashing out, but I completely disagree with the way that a lot of these more extreme folks are going about it, because they are never going to get people to go on board with their extreme message like this.
Doesn't it undermine your message to the nth degree when you're like, when you say what you said earlier, Sean, where how you value this game, or like it just completely makes your message moot because you've taken it to this level that is not reasonable. I don't think. Whether you want to say this is contributing to people, to someone who has these set of beliefs, okay, that you're probably right about that. However, hey, this is an equation of buying this game means killing a trans kid. It's like, no.
And you can't go that route because if you have gotten to be so extreme that I understand to a certain level, I certainly don't know it personally, that transgender people have been bullied and marginalized and killed in this country and elsewhere in the world. But if your response is to then bully other people who don't align with your beliefs, I mean, that's not a road we can go down successfully.
And it's such a wildly complicated issue because Harry Potter was such a bastion for so many people to find kind of like an escape. Both of it being fantasy, but also like the subject matter, it kind of deals with that a lot. So, you know, you read stories about a lot of marginalized groups finding this solace in Harry Potter. And now you're saying, well, now it's not okay anymore. And, you know, if you're now hurt by it, if it was once this thing for you and it is now not, totally understand. Like, that's valid. But if it, you know, if you can separate it and it still is this place that was your, safe spot for so many years, and now you're just saying, well, it can't be that anymore. I think that gets really complicated. And, you know, to say, Dave, here was a great example. I do this thing where I would say Dave when I make a point. Chris is right
because
there,
I'm too stupid to know otherwise. I get it.
Yeah, that's probably it, actually. So, you know, you read a thing that says J.K. Rowling herself has said she will take the money she's earned from the game and fund anti-trans legislature and movements. And then they post a tweet where J.K. Rowling, somebody says, how do you sleep at night? And she says, I read the checks that I get, and normally I fall asleep pretty easily, which is such a petty fucking thing for her to say. Like, she is a piece of shit. But that's also not saying, quote, I am going to take the money I earned from this game and directly fund anti-trans. So, but like the whole thing is just sort of based on hearsay and misinformation. Like, we can all agree that she sucks. I don't know if she has any fans. I will even say I think what she believes is coming from what she thinks is a good place. She thinks women have such a hard time already. And so now, like, men oppress women so much all the time. And now you have men who want to become women. This is her words. So like now we don't even have like our own thing anymore. And like, can we just have this place for women? Like, can we just have, can men just go away? And obviously that's flawed thinking, but you know, I wish she would just get off Twitter. I wish she would honestly just go away. And I wish she could open her heart and eyes a little bit to like the damage that she is doing. Whether it's looking more into things, trying to find a better place of understanding, but like she's not going to do it because she is this petty person. But it's just, it's a minefield. Everything on this topic is such a minefield.
Yeah. And I mean, doesn't that make people double down on their beliefs is when they get called out and called names instead of, hey, I think you might be wrong on this. Here's the reasons why. It's you idiot. You're such a horrible person. You deserve to die. It's like, okay, well then I'm just going to double down on my beliefs because clearly you're proving everything I'm saying right in their mind, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And then you get two people debating and they're like, one person saying, well, actually, you know, like biologically, blah, blah, blah. And then the other person is saying, well, no, because this is a construct, right? But the whole thing is laced with insults the whole time. They're both calling each other the worst shit you can imagine, interspersed with the points that they're trying to make. And so obviously they're getting nowhere.
I think this has also kind of shown us
the whole topic is so complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the answer is, to be really honest with you, but that's, I think, a topic for another day.
Well, we've talked about operating in the gray area for this show for a while. I mean, that's sort of what we hung our hat on back in the day, and we still do. We just don't talk about it as much. But I think it has also shown us that we know that Twitter's an echo chamber, but I think sometimes it's a handy reminder to realize that its reach is not as big as it seems. I'm not even just talking about people outside of the platform, which is obvious. I mean, I made the example a couple of weeks ago, like my grandpa, who would not have known what the hell Twitter was before he died. Like I don't even know if he would know the word, let alone what it meant, what it represented, what the demographics were. But even within the platform, you see these wildly dissonant views that are just being espoused by different groups of people. And that was why when we went over the list of games, I mentioned like, well, is there going to be a lot of backlash to this game? Because already as the release date was announced, you could see people on Twitter like lining up their campaigns to go after it. It turns out the answer was no, because like we alluded to earlier, sales have been fine. And whatever vocal minority has tried to do to stop that has not worked, probably because of the extremities we've talked about to this point. So it's like, it's handy to remember that while there might be some big kerfuffle on Twitter one day, usually this stuff just blows over. And it's not actually as big a deal as it seems because there's just going to be some new thing to get outraged about the next day. And this one's going to be quickly forgotten.
Yeah, it's too easy to, it happens too easily in the Twitter world. I mean, I've seen a lot of people tweet that Twitter isn't real life because I think the stats were something that 90% of tweets are tweeted by like 8% of Twitter users, basically. Like for the most part, people aren't out there tweeting. So it's a very small percentage of people that make the majority of the content, which means their beliefs are the ones that are put forward, not the other 92% of the country or world, essentially, in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. It's the same thing of like 99% of people believe X. And it's like, well, no, only the percentage of people who are the type of person who would stop in a mall and take this test in the first place. So, yeah, I mean, you're completely right on that. I just, even though that's the truth, it really bothers me when it's like, oh, I see your allyship ends in a video game. It's like, man, come on. Like, well, that's the stuff that just gets under my skin.
I know it wasn't to this extent, but like George Lucas removed himself from Star Wars, basically. You know, George Lucas isn't associated with Star Wars anymore. J.K. Rowling, in a sense, with this game especially, isn't really associated with it anymore. Yeah, she gets royalties from it because she's the one that created it, but like she's not really in charge of the world anymore, as far as I know. So you are kind of separating the art from the artist in that sense, right?
Yeah. I think smarter people than me have the best solution. And what they basically said is, I'm not going to put money in her pocket, right? And it's like, fuck you, dude. You're $60. She's a billionaire. Like, you're not doing shit. This protest that you're doing. And one guy was like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stream the game and have it be a charity to raise money for trans groups. And I was like, yeah, that's actually doing something. you're playing the game even. You're not just protesting, and you're still doing more than somebody that's like, well, I'm not going to give her money. And I don't want to come, across that, because if it's important to somebody, if they feel strongly about it, then great. I think it's just the people that are trying to cross that line of making all these huge statements that it's uncalled for.
Well, it's them trying. I think a lot of those cases, people trying to feel better about themselves. Like, oh, hey, I'm doing such a big thing because I'm not buying this game. If you don't want to buy this game because you have a certain feeling, or you don't want to buy anything or take part in anything because of your beliefs, feelings, fine. That's more than your right, and I have no problem with it whatsoever. But that doesn't mean you get to tell everybody else not to do it too. You can try. You can say, I'm not going to do this. But the bullying, the exclusionary, the trying to just make everyone do what you do, it's the same tactic in a different method.
Well, and I think the biggest problem to me just real quick, I was going to say the biggest problem for me is kind of going full circle, where it's like some of the people, like the streamers, the influencers, the YouTubers, whatever, some of the people that they've been lobbying against playing this game have been tremendous LGBTQ plus allies. So it's not even just that. It's like you're undermining everything that they even believe, that might agree with you, that might be an advocate for your cause, because they support this one project in this one field of pop culture that you don't happen to agree with. And it's like, now you're not even seeing the forest for the trees. You've just undermined everything because you have this one vendetta. And now it's like, now you're attacking people that have been tremendously helpful to you for really no reason.
Other than you want to be righteous. And that's it.
That's tough. And I get where it comes from. I get what's led to this building up inside. And the one thing I was going to ask, because, I mean, maybe this is better for Sean because he's played it, but like, to me, I don't know if you've played the other Harry Potter games, but I think a little bit of this is because this is like a unique new story that you're putting yourself into. It isn't about Harry and Hermione and friends. It's now a brand new story with like, so maybe it feels to some people like
it's their own.
It's like, this is your chance to join the magic, but they feel spurned by the world, so they don't want that. But like, I don't think I'm off base when I say the past games were kind of like a lot of other pop culture stanchions did, which was like, all right, now you can replay this. Like a lot of the Star Wars video games. Now you can do the battle against Count Dooku. Wow, cool, right? Like same thing here. I've seen some of like the VR ones that were like, you can do a magic battle against Voldemort. Wow, cool. This is unique because it's new. It's different content. And I wonder if for some people it's like, now I can put myself in this world, but this world doesn't want me. So fuck this world and fuck you.
Yeah, I think I would be willing to wager it's the first AAA game that's not a Lego game of Harry Potter. So that's a big deal. And it's like a unique story. It's like playing a game of Revenge of the Sith. Is that going to be as good as Knights of the Old Republic? A unique story in a unique setting in that world? Like, no, of course not. I think it's a big part of it. But that kind of begs the question I was wondering about. Why the ire for the game and the movies go pretty unscathed, at least as far as I've seen. And I'm wondering, is it just because she's put her foot in her mouth so much so recently? Do people just not care as much about the movies because they suck and no one's going to see them anyway? Like, what is the wall there?
It's a good question. I think it's the fact the movies are already done. They're out. They're a thing. They're not making big money. No,
the new movies, Dave.
Oh.
I'm saying like the Fantastic Beasts movies.
I understand. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think there's a subsect. I think it's the Twitch part of it, because so many people stream this and there's so many people who feel, maybe I'm generalizing, and I apologize to anyone I'm generalizing, but I think that there's a subset of people that are generally ostracized by society and find comfort in things that they stream, like Twitch. They find comfort in a lot of these things that are generally more solo acts. And maybe if you're a person who is trans and in that mode, and you feel that this game is offensive to you, seeing people that you like in Twitch streaming is much more difficult to deal with, possibly. I don't know.
I think it's fair, because I'm kind of the Twitch and YouTube denizen of the group. So I can tell you that, look at Awesome Games Done Quick, the marathon speedrunning thing that they do every year for charity. I can tell you that there are a lot more LGBTQ plus representatives, like, how do you want to say, per capita or by ratio or whatever, for that event, and in the audience, not just on screen, but off, than there are in the regular populace, because I think Dave's right. There is a certain level of, you can find shared experiences with people in a way that you might not be able to in the real world. For people who actually stream themselves, it's a chance to do the stuff we talked about in the AI episode. You can have a virtual avatar that looks the way you might want to look, but don't, whether you're still thinking about transitioning or it's an impossible thing for you to do in a certain way, right? So it opens up the opportunity for people of all these different walks of life to gather together. But that also means that they're then weaponized if they feel like that system is being turned against them, whether that's fair or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't really know if that answers the question per se, but I think it's part of this whole cauldron of things that are sort of bubbling over the surface. And I do think that's one of the ingredients, because for some people, that's like their safe space they can go to. And again, whether it's like the AGDQ or Critical Role has a big time LGBTQ plus viewership. For people, this is their escape. This is their method to get out of their current lives and lose themselves in something else. So if anything threatens that, that's when like the claws come out and it becomes a dangerous situation.
You get protective of your safe space. You get protective of what you feel comfortable in, and if that's potentially taken away, it's dangerous.
Yeah. So I get it. I'm just disappointed that it's become this strong. And again, it's hard to paint everyone with one brush, because this really is a very small but very vocal minority that's pushing these extreme views to this level. But those are the ones everybody's seeing, and it reflects on the rest of the community, fair or not.
Yeah. And of course, we're three cis white guys. I mean, we're trying our best just to make sense of it. I don't know what anyone experiences. I don't know what to make of the feeling that someone would be in that position when you are marginalized to that extent. But I do know there's logical ways of going about it, is the best I can say.
The saying that I always go back to is hurt people. And while it's cute, it is a 4-word way to kind of describe why I think the backlash to this has been stronger than even some people might have expected, because it's a group that has been pushed aside so often that they just feel like, well, this is the last straw and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get my view out there. In my experience, in almost all walks of life, pushing people away like that is just never going to be a unifier, because it makes sense at a base level. Yeah. I was going to ask one thing. So Sean, you in particular, I think might have a good view on this, because you love all the reviews and stuff and scoring. We take all this stuff pretty seriously for people of our level, but you talked about the scores. They're almost all very good. Many of them from Harry Potter fans, but I don't, like you said, I think that helps the experience, but I don't think it's necessary. There was one review, however, that I wanted to talk about, and that was Wired. Either of you see it?
Nope.
I don't think so.
I'm going to find
Look it up real quick. You can be tech guy, and we'll describe it for Sean.
Go for it.
But they gave the game a 1 out of 10.
Okay. Wow.
Now, Wired is not like a regular game reviewer per se. They have game reviews, but they're not one of the ones that are incorporated into Metacritic, I don't think, because it's not really their main lane, right? It's just the thing they do because they kind of cover tech and gadgets on the side. However, they used a review platform with a score to just take pot shots at the idea behind the game. And look, I don't particularly care about Hogwarts Legacy. I'm not worried about how well it does or how it's received. But I thought that was a waste of a platform, and that they should not be allowed to do that again in the future, because that just undermines the entire idea of a review.
So here you go, Sean. Here's the one paragraph response.
It's a doozy. Do it.
This is great. So Wired writes, the first line is, it helped me say goodbye to the setting for good. Okay, fine. If that's how you felt about it, fine. The longer paragraph, though, is the story is rooted in anti-Semitic tropes. So, Sean, I'll give you a second. Have you seen that yet in the game? Anti-Semitic tropes.
Yeah. No. So what they're saying is there is goblins in the game, and the goblin, I think that's the name. Goblins, trolls, or
with Gringotts Bank. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They have hooked noses.
That was that existed in the books and the movies. Just it was out there, like that already existed.
Yeah.
They're just following it.
And that's the part where I'm like, okay, you almost sound racist telling me why the goblins are racist. But I would disagree with that assertion personally.
The gameplay feels dated. The graphics feel like they're a couple generations behind. All the characters are one-dimensional.
No.
It doesn't stay true to the established lore. Every character feels like an off-brand version of the characters we know and love. There's no sense of place, no magic, no heart. That's the one paragraph.
Let me say, even if that all is true, 1 out of 10 is like, if you wanted to give Cyberpunk 1 out of 10 because it was a broken, unplayable mess, this was the only time I could see a video game being 1 out of 10. 1? That means like nothing was done right. You can't even make sense of it. And, you know, I disagree with a lot of that. I think it's kind of like what I said before. The story, while not as great as you would want it to be and like super compelling, you know, it works for the game. Like, it's fine. Middle of the road. The characters, some of them are better than others. Like, so to just say it's all terrible, it's all bad, that's just the bias coming through.
And I have a hard time with when you go in anything scientific, anything logical, when you go in with this is what I want the result to be. It just taints anything you write.
And, you know, it's hard because I know, like, let's say you do really feel strongly about going against J.K. Rowling. And it's like, you know, I feel bad because earlier I was like, what are you going to do? Not buy the game? Like, that's not going to do anything. A lot of people, that's all they can do, right? Like, they don't have a platform or they don't have a bunch of cash sitting around to donate or raise money. And it's like, they can vote with their wallet. And so, you know, I want people to feel empowered to do that and do what they feel like is right. I think we all agree it's just drawing the line where you're now dictating to other people what they need to do and what the moral lines are.
And being cruel in the process. Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, I don't want to call too much attention to it. Wired clearly did it for clickbait, so I even hesitated to bring it up, but it's like, you don't often see a game get a 1 out of 10 because, like you said, my question becomes, did it like not work when you pushed start on the title screen? Like, a 1 out of 10 has to be reserved for the biggest disasters and colossal failures. And it's like, the game's fully playable. You can argue about how good it is, certainly. And if you gave it a score in like the 5 range because of your overarching beliefs against JK, I'd be like, well, that's probably still not fair, but I get it. But a 1, it's like, you shouldn't be taken seriously as a platform ever again, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think Wired and others, where they're like, we're not going to review it. Again, I think do what you think is right. I think you're doing a disservice, even if you're against her morally. It's this idea of like, you're not even going to play. I saw some platforms where they're like, we're really against her, but we feel like avoiding the controversy completely is not doing anyone any favors. Mm-hmm. And that's where I completely agree. You know, we're getting to the point where there's this new AI system that is changing old books to remove anything that could potentially be triggering. Mm-hmm. And that is really scary to me. And so I think not reviewing Harry Potter is not on the same level, but it all kind of reminds me of the same thing. It's like, I still think you should engage with it, be part of the controversy, come in, experience it, and then form your opinion. And if it's, you know, it's a middle of the road game, maybe it's even a good game, I still think you shouldn't play it. Fine, great. But just being like, I'm not going to play it, I'm not even going to address it, I think that's problematic.
I mean, anytime that you remove the, I'll put in quotes, mistakes of history, you're just setting people up to either A, repeat them, or be extra hurt when those same things occur in the future. You know, there's no way to learn better than experience. And so other than taking examples from the past. And so if you try to clean up books and you try to clean up horrible things that happened in the past, it makes it so that people don't know that these things occurred once. I think it's important to keep that going, keep that dialogue going about bad things that happened in the past, so you can make sure not to repeat them.
And we've started a critical race theory discussion, so that's great.
No, I didn't mean to.
Well, you know what, though? Really, that's why this is such a tricky topic, right? Mm-hmm. Because it pulls from all these different things that are all hot button issues right now.
Well, and maybe it's good that it'll come to a head. And I don't think this is going to be the catalyst to fix everything, but I like when discussions are had and it brings things to the forefront to get people to think about them. Now it's going to take a long time, and there can people who are going to dig their heels in the sand and never change their opinion and actually get, you know, either belligerent or, you know, bullying, whatever they do. But there's some people who are going to think about it critically, and the more and more that happens, I hope then it'll become a more common thing to think critically about things. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well, we can't avoid it because, like, by avoiding it, we're not even all speaking with the issue with the same language or nomenclature. There was a debate over, like, saying natural males, natural females, and one person saying, well, natural males, natural females, when they undergo transition, blah, blah, blah. And then the other person, the person they were arguing with was saying that there's no such thing as not female, not male. That's a construct, and that's not real. It's pre-transition or post-transition, and that's it. And it's like, wherever you stand on that issue, it's like they're not even speaking the same language. How could they possibly come to any sort of conclusion? And that's why it's so hairy. But by avoiding it completely, like, we're never going to reach that spot.
Isn't that the hardest part of this whole thing right now, is that so many people, especially those on the fringes who haven't been exposed to it so much, do not understand. I mean, if you ask the average person on the street, what does pansexual mean? I'm not sure a lot of people would be able to answer that. Would people understand what natural female, what was the terminology? AFAB, I think, which is assigned female at birth. Like, I don't know if you said, hey, what does AFAB mean? I don't know that a lot of people know what that means. And
all fops are bastards.
Exactly. So, like, how many people in the world maybe would want to be allies but can't even get their foot in the door because there's a level of knowledge that people who live this every day understand, and then the people who don't live it every day can't understand because they don't live it every day, and it's difficult to even get your foot in the door to help to be an ally. You can say, like, I want to help, but you don't know how.
I saw a stat.
Well, even two people I saw on a message board, sorry, anecdotally, they were on the same side. They couldn't get it straight of which one of gender or sex meant what. And they were, like, arguing with each other, but they were trying to say the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's so messy. Yeah.
I saw a stat that I wish I could give more sourcing for this because I think it was true, but I don't remember exactly where I saw it, that I think we're up to like 7.3% of the population now identifies somewhere on the LGBTQ plus spectrum, which is the highest it's ever been. And also means that 93% of people do not, at least not yet. Maybe they are and they don't realize it yet, whatever, right? Like, there's obviously a lot more than just straight numbers to it. But at the end of the day, we're still talking about a smaller population that is struggling to get their voice heard and clearly is having a hard time with how to message it correctly to try and get people on their side. And during the Black Lives Matter movement, we talked about how it shouldn't be incumbent upon Black people to explain the history of racism to white people who don't understand it, because they're the ones who've already had to live it systemically. They shouldn't also be responsible for educating everybody else. However, they also are the ones who have had to experience it and can best explain it. So I would never want people to feel like they have to. The same is true here, where it's like the best way I think that you can spread awareness about your cause is to be vocal when something like this happens, but in a way that doesn't alienate anybody that you might be able to bring to your cause.
Yep. Educational, vocal. Like, that's the best I can have, is say, like, hey, I don't know if you heard about this, but here's why this is a problem. Not you're killing kids.
And, like, that sucks. It sucks that that's the way that it probably has to be. It shouldn't be incumbent upon you to do that when you're already in an unfair situation. But sometimes things aren't fair. If it was fair, you wouldn't be in the situation to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So now, to me, it's about what's the best way to move forward and get people to have shared experiences where they can actually learn and grow from it, if it's even possible at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then that everybody just wants to make everything one of the two extremes, and it's like, I'm like, oh, I'm confused about this or that, and people hear that, I'm like, yeah, and why do they need their own bathrooms? I'm like, no, don't put me in there. I'm not saying that at all. Actually, I think, like, that's great, and then that's the whole issue, is like trying to separate those things and not just becoming, all of politics right now. If you're Republican, you are far extreme right on every issue, and you must agree on every issue. And then the same with the other side, and it's just, like, impossible.
Yeah, this is tough for us at the Gray Area show because people are probably more entrenched than ever. Maybe that's not actually true, but it feels like it is, and social media is a big part of that. So, it's tough because we do like to see things with a gray area, and most people don't seem to be willing to do that, or at the very least, they might say they are, but they don't.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at college sports and the debate that's happening right now, and I'm happy with my spot of like being an ally, advocating. I'm glad I don't have to come up with any like solutions because I've said it so many times. It's all so messy, so complicated, and there's so many different viewpoints that like contradict each other. It's so hard.
Mm-hmm. Gotta say, I'm interested in kind of looking back at the game. Jackrock put on the chat he has no interest in the Harry Potter books or movies, but enjoyed the game. You don't have to be a Harry Potter fan to enjoy the game. I think that's an interesting wrinkle too, where you don't have to be a fan of the source material. It could be a fun game if you don't know anything about it because you get to fly around a broomstick and cast spells. That's kind of universal, I think. And so another reason that you can play the game and not be killing trans kids.
And to be fair, that's probably part of what got people into it in the first place was the idea of this magical world. Magic's real. Like, look at all these cool things. This owl has a cool name. This is Butterbeer. We talked like there's all these little touches that were what sucked people into the books and or the movies. So it only makes sense that they might rediscover it through the games. But if you have seen that stuff before or read it, then there are those little Easter eggs of a sort. I mean, it's probably not fair to call them Easter eggs, but like the callbacks to the source material, the lore, whatever. We'll get that much more out of it, but I don't think it's required. Like, I'm still somewhat interested in this, even though, again, I have almost no Harry Potter backing at all. So, like, I'm glad to hear that from someone else who hasn't played it. But, I mean, Jaguar makes the point, like, he wasn't a fan of Spider-Man and Ninja Turtles. I never really watched the Ninja Turtle movies or played the games as a kid, but I love the arcade game. So, like, you can certainly engage with it on a level without having, like, I have all the deep lore in my pocketbook, and I'm going to thumb through it.
But I think that's, like, that's a good point, and it's interesting. It's like tangential to the issue, though, and I understand that. The issue being, if you pay for this game, you are lining the pockets of an anti-trans person, right? And I think that's the debate, and that's what you got to figure out for yourself. Is like, do you agree with that association? Do you feel like if you pay for this game that you're funding anti-trans, or can you make that separation? And I think that comes down to the person, though. I think we've circled back, right? We're repeating what we said really before is like, you got to figure out where you stand on your own, and anything you decide, great. Like, that works for you. You just can't force other people one way or the other.
I have one final question for you, Sean.
Yeah.
Are you ready to retract your Hall of Fame vote for J.K. Rowling that you were so adamant about?
I'm actually glad you brought that up because I was like, man, that episode did not age well.
It did for me. It aged great for me.
Well, okay, in a way. But so we were arguing under not this new wrinkle in the debate. If she had made these statements at this time that we did the episode, she either hadn't yet or I was not aware of them. We were talking about how she was like, why is she tweeting that Dumbledore's gay? It's so long after the fact. It's a cool detail, but where is this in the books? Blah, blah, blah. And all the other stuff she's doing on Twitter. I didn't know about this, but yeah. Going back to an episode where I am defending J.K. Rowling, I definitely would like to redact that for sure.
I think it's episode like 350 or something. I don't know, somewhere around that range. So good luck.
We missed the Halcyon days where it really was just as simple as like, well, now she keeps going back and tweaking things like, oh, Harry and Hermione actually should have ended up together. Ha, whoops. And at the time, it was like, man, you're ruining a good thing. And now she's not just ruining her own work, she's ruining other people's lives. So that's great.
So now 1 out of 10.
It's interesting how, like, I feel like most people agree that she sucks.
Yeah.
And I wish we could like find more common ground in like she's a shitty, like, she is the type of person who would write a book about a victim that mirrors her in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the kind of person we're dealing with.
Yep.
She sucks. She is a piece of shit.
It would be fascinating if we haven't done that segment in a while to begin with, but if we ever wanted to revisit and see how scores changed, we never had anybody in what I think was the Hall of Shame. There was like 4 tiers. It was Hall of Fame, which made the cut. There was Hall of Tame, I think Hall of Lame, and then Hall of Shame. I think we only had one person even end up in Lame because to a certain point, I guess it's like, why would you, like, what are we going to do, like Hitler, so we can put someone in the Hall of Shame? But in retrospect, she might get a low enough score to end up in there. So that's pretty fascinating.
I think she'd be Hall of Shame for sure. I think it almost feels like now like she wrote those books in spite of like being a horrible person.
Right.
Like it was just when you hear lightning in a bottle, it's like it has never struck more than J.K. Rowling, I feel like.
Great. Well, but she created something that is still desirable to a lot of people. This world is still desirable to an extent that people who grew up with it. I mean, I was 14, I think, when the first book came out, somewhere around there, 13 or 14. There are people who are younger than me who are now full grown adults who are able to make their own lore and work for these companies and take something that they grew up with as a kid and create and turn it in what they want to, which means that she's created this thing that is going to be in perpetual in a sense, but other people can take it and run with it and make it into a much more inclusive type of thing, which I think is kind of cool in a lot of ways.
I mean, the Harry Potter universe has done a lot of good for people, and it seems like a shame to throw the whole baby out with the putrid, poisonous bathwater. But that's why I have a hard time getting on board, where it's like, this universe has meant a lot to a lot of people, some of which are the very same marginalized folks we've been talking about all along.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that you can just erase the entire thing, no matter what JK does, to alienate everybody who used to see something in her.
I think if it's too painful for you, just the knowledge that she wrote it, like I understand. But I think like they always talk about writers' intentions don't matter with writing, and I know there are sometimes more obvious examples, but it's like what ends up on the page is what matters. And so people read these books and they feel like it's a great message of inclusiveness and anti-bullying and all of that, like then great. And whatever beliefs the author has, well, that's unfortunate and it sucks. It doesn't affect the product that's on the page.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Did we solve anything today?
No, but we didn't solve anything in the AI episode, and we didn't solve anything in the Kevin Durant episode. And I don't know if we generally solve anything, because if it were that simple, people then who are smarter than us probably would have already done it.
Well.
Yeah.
Let them chat, guys.
Yeah. It was interesting. Somebody said, "You're misunderstanding separate the author from the product." It's like if the author went through a divorce and there's a female character, it's like, don't assume that it's about the person. It's context. This is different. This is, it's separating the beliefs of the author from the product of the book. But I still think I disagree with that person. I think it can still apply if you are able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So did we solve anything? I mean, not really, but I feel like we have a viewpoint that we can support.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty coherent.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
It's not to be extreme.
That's the best we can do.
Don't be extreme. That's our viewpoint.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I still advocate that something along the lines of the gray area, when we rebrand for the third time, that it should probably be something along those lines, like the new title of the show.
It's called Gray Area. Boom.
Like, because it has been the consistent theme of our show since the beginning. It really has.
For 12 years.
We've been this for like 5 or 6 now, so I guess it is getting to be about the point where we put a fresh coat of paint on this, which really makes the archives look awkward, because they're all still in one big pool. So until like episode 300 something, I think it's at the buzzer, and then all of a sudden it flips, and then there's video when there wasn't before. But I think all that evolution is good, because if we were stagnant, we'd probably be done by now. But I think you're right. I think if we had to pick anything, we were looking for anything that wasn't sports themed when it was this one, and I think we went too much in another direction.
Yeah, and then this gets us away from Michelle, which,
important.
I feel like more and more, look, you guys don't have to agree with this, but more and more I feel like does not represent a gray area of any kind. And it's like, all right, I'm ready to move on from this era.
It's fair.
It's a hot take.
We're sort of shrugging. You can't see it because you're not on Zoom, but it's a shrug of mostly agreement.
It was fun to argue with her, though.
I think she added a lot when she was on.
I will not force you both to endorse my viewpoint. I will just say that is my perspective.
Now, no absolutes.
So when we're back on the show, it's going to be a little awkward, but I don't think she's going to watch the archives.
She didn't listen when she was on it, and you don't, so there we go.
You don't know what things we've said about you when you're not on.
Yeah, exactly. If the listeners could rat me out though and betray me, so I I guess we'll see.
Do it, Maisie.
It's true. I mean, look, everything we've ever said is recorded on this platform. So if somebody really wants to try and go back and either cancel us or set us on each other, I guess the possibility is there.
565 episodes, approximately each an hour long. That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. And somehow we're still friends. So I guess we're doing okay. All right. That is the end of this episode. Thank you to Sean for joining from our usual spot in Flagstaff. Thank you to Dave for housing me briefly. Thank you to the people in chat who, after a 45-second delay, were really helpful in making sure this was running smoothly, and we got the adjustment in so it'll sound at least pretty good. We'll be back next week with a regular episode. It might be talking about Kevin Durant. I don't know. We don't have a plan for sure yet, but Kevin Durant's first game is tomorrow night or last night if you're listening to the podcast. So, we're pretty excited.
Very.
But we'll see.
I thought of a bunch of random questions too. So that can be a backup. We have a lot of different directions we can go.
I like Sean just throwing out random questions. This is great because 75% of the time they fall flat on their face. He doesn't get his intended result. I love that. The awkwardness just fuels me.
Well, yeah, okay. Let me ask you, Dave, is me not getting an intended result, is that my fault or is that your fault? I think it's your fault. Now, where's your off chops? If I ask any question Dave asks me, I will make entertaining. Dave allows me to fall flat on my face all the time because
you do it so easily.
He can't do improv. he just fails every time.
I want the audience to know how often Sean has said, Dave, I really like when you join us for reviews of something you don't know about a great bit about, because you do such a great job of asking questions that are pertinent. He's stunned. He's silent.
I'm just letting this happen. I don't.
Yeah, asking questions is different. Look, you attack me first. I am just attacking right back. You know.
This is the end of the episode. Bye, everybody.
Don't go well. That's your fault. That's not my fault.
To add to that, we also have a Fire Emblem review pretty soon. If Michaela is past chapter 4, I don't know. I'm on 17.
No, she hasn't even started. She has not even started.
And I think we're going to have to review Creed 3, although Dave might be not helpful for that. But that's kind of a big deal for me, so that one might be one we do. So we got a lot of stuff coming up. As we've mentioned pretty much the last 6 months, we're never hurting for ideas anymore. That's the best part about this, is it's easy for us to get on and talk for an hour. Look, we were going to do a half hour tonight, and as you can see, it's been 57 minutes. Never really a concern.
To be fair to Dave, we could do a Last of Us TV show review.
Very true.
That would be something that Dave did that Chris did not do.
Very true.
So
I can sit here and ask dumb questions.
It's true. Who's Joel?
That's true.
So if Troy Baker's in the show, what does that mean?
I don't know who Troy Baker is.
He was the voice actor for Joel, but he has a cameo in this week's episode. See, I know these things even though I don't engage in this media because I'm well-read.
I don't read about these things. I just watch the show.
Yeah. All right, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week with, I would assume, a regular show because there's no way I'm not going to be back. Yeah, it's a spoiler. Deal with it. It's a cameo. I'm not really that worried. She's kidding anyways, I know. In between episodes, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com, until we rename ourselves to thegrayarea.com, and youtube.com/objectionnetwork for new videos 7 days a week. Thank you once again for watching. We'll see you next time. I don't know how to end stream on this. There it is.
Okay, so far, so